If God already sees every choice you will ever make, then are you truly free? Or are you just playing out a story that's already been written? For centuries, philosophers believed this question destroyed the idea of free will, until one man in medieval Paris saw something no one else had noticed.
In the winter of 1273, inside a quiet stone chamber in the city of Paris, a monk sat motionless before a wooden desk. Outside, the bells of the university quarter echoed through narrow medieval streets. Students argued in Latin under archways. Horses clattered across frozen stone. Smoke curled upward from bakeries preparing the morning's bread. But inside the Dominican priory, the room was still. The monk dipped a quill into black ink and began another line of thought. His name was Thomas Aquinas. The candle beside him flickered against thick parchment pages, already crowded with careful handwriting. Stacks of manuscripts surrounded him like small fortresses of thought. Logic, theology, Aristotle's philosophy, translated from Arabic scholars. Centuries of intellectual inheritance sat within arm's reach. Yet Aquinas was wrestling with a question far older than the university itself. A question that had survived the fall of Rome, crossed deserts with theologians, and whispered through monasteries for centuries. If God knows the future perfectly, are human beings truly free? The contradiction had unsettled generations of thinkers, because divine foreknowledge seemed to trap humanity in a silent cage. If every choice was already known by God before it happened, then perhaps freedom was only an illusion, an elaborate performance inside a script already written. Some philosophers had reached a troubling conclusion. Perhaps humans were not free at all. Perhaps they were actors reciting lines in a cosmic play. But Aquinas was not convinced. He leaned forward, resting his hands against the table. Outside, a cold wind brushed against the monastery walls. Somewhere in the courtyard, a door creaked open. Footsteps passed. The world moved. Choices unfolded everywhere, and Aquinas believed those choices were real. The mistake, he thought, was imagining that God experienced time the same way humans did. Humans lived inside time's river, moment after moment, past dissolving behind them, future approaching like an unseen horizon. But God, Aquinas argued, existed outside the river entirely. From that vantage point, God did not predict the future the way a fortune teller predicts an event. God simply saw it, all of it, past, present, future, simultaneously. Aquinas had borrowed the idea from earlier philosophers, but he refined it with the precision of a mathematician. Imagine a man standing on a mountain overlooking a winding road. From the road itself, travelers can only see the path immediately ahead. Each turn is uncertain, but the observer on the mountain sees the entire route at once. Every traveler, every intersection, every destination, yet the observer does not cause the travelers to walk their path. He only sees it. That was Aquinas' insight. God's knowledge does not force human decisions. It simply observes them from a perspective beyond time. He paused, considering the weight of the argument. Because if this was true, then freedom remained intact. Human beings were not puppets. Their decisions were genuinely their own. But the solution introduced another unsettling realization. If freedom was real, then the possibility of evil was unavoidable. Aquinas knew the evidence was everywhere. Europe was a landscape of conflict. Wars between kingdoms, betrayals between allies, famines, political assassinations. Even within monasteries, monks struggled with pride, ambition, envy. Human nature was fragile, and yet Christian theology insisted that God had intentionally created this fragile species. Aquinas dipped the quill again. Ink darkened the page. He wrote slowly, constructing arguments with careful logic. Love, he concluded, could not exist without freedom. A forced act of love is not love at all. It is obedience. True love requires the possibility of refusal, the ability to say no, which meant God had created a universe where loyalty, compassion, and goodness could emerge freely, but only by accepting the risk that they might also fail. The design of creation, therefore, was not mechanical. It was relational. God had not built a world of perfect robots. He had created beings capable of choosing courage, choosing betrayal, choosing mercy, or choosing cruelty. The paradox deepened because this meant divine wisdom had knowingly allowed the possibility of suffering. The deaths, the wars, the betrayals, none of them were accidents inside the system. They were risks embedded in the structure of freedom itself. Aquinas leaned back, exhaustion touching his face. For years, he had worked on a massive project, his Summa Theologica, an attempt to organize centuries of Christian thought into a coherent framework. Page after page, question after question. But the deeper he went, the more he realized that theology was not about eliminating mystery. It was about approaching it carefully, respectfully. Freedom, Aquinas believed, was the most dangerous gift ever placed inside creation. Not because it guaranteed evil, but because it made evil possible. Yet it also made goodness meaningful. Outside the monastery walls, Paris continued its restless movement. Merchants bargaining, scholars debating, children chasing each other through muddy streets, each life unfolding through decisions. Aquinas closed his eyes briefly. The weight of the idea settled in his mind. God had created a universe where love was not inevitable. It had to be chosen, which meant the story of humanity was not a perfectly controlled design. It was something far more fragile, a moral experiment unfolding across centuries. Some would call that reckless, others would call it profound. Years later, Aquinas would experience a mysterious spiritual vision during Mass that left him silent. According to witnesses, he stopped writing afterward, telling his secretary that everything he had written felt like straw compared to what he had seen. But the pages he had already completed would travel across history, influencing philosophers, guiding theologians, shaping debates about freedom that still echo today. Because the question had not disappeared. If God knew humanity might destroy itself, why create humanity anyway? Aquinas' answer did not eliminate the risk. It explained it. Freedom was not a flaw in the system. It was the system. And somewhere within that fragile structure, human beings were still making choices every day, choices that no divine foreknowledge could force, only witness. The medieval bells rang again through the streets of Paris, and beneath their echo lingered a quiet, unsettling possibility. Perhaps the Creator did not design a world guaranteed to succeed. Perhaps He designed one capable of meaning.
But meaning requires something dangerous.